And welcome to another Biddle on Saturdays. If I could even talk. Saturday, February 1st, 2020. How is everybody doing?
Good.
Doing great, Rocco. Great.
We are officially open for business.
Excellent.
And this week we are going to talk about Solus, our distro challenge for, well, this week and next week. Why don't we get right into it? Because after the distro challenge, we'll talk about. I have to give a few suggestions for our distro challenges in the future, and maybe some other topics. But we'll get right into Solus now. Solus 4.1, Fortitude, right, Peter? Fortitude.
Yes.
Okay.
They kept the same name from the 4.0.
Yep. And you were allowed to pick any Solus. I was trying the Plasma version out, and I think a lot of others were, but you were allowed to pick any. Aris, did you try Solus?
Yes. I started with the Budgie version and try installing it. When you go into the advanced one where you pick your partitions, I wish it was different because I couldn't figure out a way to select the partition easily, like the mounting point. Because I thought I could click anywhere with left click it, and then it would give me an option. I thought I had never done it before like that, so I wasn't sure if I had to somehow mount it because it said that you were supposed to, I think, wear your partitions before you did it, so I wasn't sure about that. But then I discovered you need to click right above in that column where it says the mounting point, exactly along that column, because if you click anywhere else, it doesn't do that option. So I wish they would have like a right click option so you can click anywhere in that row and select the mounting point that way, because I think that would be more clear. And once I installed it, it was very fast. It was one of the fastest installations I think that I've done recently. And with Budgie, everything worked. I installed the NVIDIA drivers, and everything was good. The only thing I cannot not compare this to the Ubuntu one. I think I prefer the Ubuntu one, the Ubuntu implementation of Budgie, because if you're using like a mouse-driven workflow, which I don't do, but I could see the benefits of that. I would miss all the different little system tray icons you can add to it. And I prefer the panel at the top, which I guess is just a preference for most people. Then I tried installing the Plasma version, and it installed fine, fast as the other one. The only problem is after I installed the NVIDIA drivers, I restarted. I installed it, I logged into it, then I installed the NVIDIA drivers, and then I restarted it again, and it would get stuck during the boot up process. Some letters came up, and like I don't think they're supposed to come up usually in the startup. And the only thing I saw that was weird, I think it says something about some pipe or something. It was trying to configure. I think the Wi-Fi, but it just got stuck there. I tried dropping down the TTY, and it could almost let me in, but I could never really go inside. It would just stall as I tried to log in. And then what I did is I wasn't sure if it was just the NVIDIA drivers, so I installed it again, and I tried it without the NVIDIA driver, and it seemed like it worked. So then I installed the NVIDIA drivers again, and again it stopped working. So I wanted to test out the Plasma version without the NVIDIA drivers because I thought that was the problem. So I installed it the third time, and then the third time, I didn't install the NVIDIA drivers, and I was using it off and on. But then I noticed that it started halting again during the startup. So I think there's something wrong with the Plasma version, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. But I know that it just stalls during the beginning.
Well, I didn't have the exact same problem you had, but I did have a problem with installing it. So I tried multiple times, and I ended up doing everything I could think of to work around this. So I downloaded the ISO, I wrote it to a USB, put it in the computer, boots up fine, go in to install it, and it works great up until I get to the point where it says examining local storage. As soon as that gets to that point, it just kind of sits there. and sits there and sits there. I let it sit there for probably 25 minutes, and it just sat there. So I killed it, and like I said, I tried everything from re-downloading the ISO, doing checksum, downloading it from the as the torrent, redoing the USB a few times, switching out the USB a few times, switching the ports that I wrote it on, many things that I tried, and I could not. Every single time it would get stuck at that examining local storage. Now, I don't know if it had a problem with one of my drives inside or what the deal was, but I just couldn't get it installed. So that's all I have. Peter, give us some good news about Solus, dude.
Okay, first of all, I'll give you some good news about something else. Justin Zobel is in the text chat right now in YouTube. And last night, he had his engagement party. So congratulations to Justin.
Congratulations, Justin.
So if we all shout, his head might be a little hurting today. So well done, Justin. Okay, so today is International Solus Biddle Day. So
it is.
Yes.
Declared by you, and I'm okay with it.
As everyone knows, I've been using Solus for well over almost 3.5 years now. And I use Budgie as my main on Filio. I do have Plasma installed on a Tesla and Dell laptop, Dell PC behind me, and an Alienware laptop. I did install 4.1 on the laptop, but it's an old laptop, so it doesn't have the EFI, so it installed no problem. And I've also tried MATE on GNOME boxes. That seemed to work well. The only one I've not tried is GNOME, but the 3 I've tried work well. It's my daily driver. It's my daily workflow for Budgie. I love coming home to using it.
Now, Peter, you're not a Plasma guy. What do you think of the Plasma version?
I've been using the Plasma on the testing PC since the testing ISO came out, and I think it's very smooth, very fast, very, very easy to use. So I do like using it now and then. The default I know Plasma is very configurable, but in my opinion, Solus Plasma comes with really good defaults.
Which is something that is not easily found in today's KDE market. I know Kubuntu comes with some decent defaults, but there isn't one out there that I would say, man, this comes with great defaults.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Thanks, Peter. Anything else?
I'll try and answer any other questions if I can as we go along.
All right, very good. Thomas, did you get a chance to try Solus this week?
Yes, I did. So I decided that this week I would be doing it in a virtual machine, and next week I'll be putting it on hardware.
Sure.
So installation went perfectly fine for me. I did the Budgie version, and this thing starts up lightning fast in virtual machine, like maybe a second or two. It is one of the fastest booting operating systems I've ever seen. That being said, once I actually get in, it feels just a tad bit sluggish compared to some other GTK distros I've used, but not terrible.
What machine you putting on, Thomas?
So I gave it 4 cores, 8 gigs of RAM, and 50 gigs of storage.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So I think that was probably just something to do with GTK or something like that. I'm not sure. I didn't look closely at it. I will say they had a slight missed opportunity. If you run the Budgie version and you look at the icon that you click on to bring up the menu, it's just 9 little dots. I feel like they should have replaced that with a Solus logo. That would have been kind of cool. Other than that, I've always liked Solus's package manager, EO package, because of the Delta downloads and the fact that it's a rolling release and all that stuff. So that all was perfectly fine. I had to kind of relearn the commands, but that simple EO package -- help, and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I noticed they had a lot of keyboard shortcuts that weren't defined. So, like, if you go in the settings and look at keyboard shortcuts, they do not have a keyboard shortcut defined to launch the terminal. So Control T does nothing. And I even tried Control T, Alt T, Super T, Control Super, Super Alt, all that. Nothing came. So I feel like that needs to be fixed because it's by default in most distros. You hit Control Alt T, boom, terminal. Also, it looks like they don't have the media buttons on your keyboard defined to control your media. So if you hit the eject button, if you have one, it doesn't like eject a CD disc reader. Volume buttons don't do anything. Play, pause, fast forward, rewind, those buttons don't do anything. And if it is defined elsewhere, that's okay. But in the settings dialog specifically, it doesn't look like they're configured. I haven't got around to actually testing that out yet. So I could very well be wrong, but it doesn't look like it.
Yeah.
Other than that, beautiful distro. Like I said, boots up lightning fast, shuts down lightning fast, updates are quick and easy. Just those keyboard shortcuts, I feel like that really needs to be fixed because as a rolling release distro, I feel like it tends to be favored by power users. Because if you look at other rolling release distros like Arch and OpenSUSE, they tend to be used by power users. I think Solus isn't catering as much to power users as much as they are to your typical day-to-day user, but I still feel like a lot of power users would at least give it a shot, and not being able to do Control T to pull up a terminal doesn't look very good. So fix that, and it's amazing.
Gotcha. Thank you, Thomas. Derek, did you happen to have a chance to try Solus this week?
Yes, I originally started it in a virtual machine and was pretty impressed with it. And then I installed it alongside my Salient OS. And from there, I noticed that there were some issues with the grub and the systemd boot. I didn't know that they use systemd boot to be able to do the boot manager.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that after I got that configured. It was It was downhill. It was great. By the way, Thomas, I can confirm that the media keys do work. I use them on a regular basis with my my keyboard on my computer on a regular basis.
Yeah, sometimes mapping from a VM or whatever, to hardware does funny things, right?
That's true. Also, I noticed that when you map a keybind, you have to log out and re-log in or reboot to be able for those keybinds to take effect. But I love it. I'm looking forward to another week with it, and I'm actually considering sticking with Budgie and as my daily driver.
Nice.
Very nice. Dan Kelly, sir, how are you?
Awesome. I got a chance to play with it, but I got probably maybe a half a review because I didn't spend as much time as I should have on other things in it. But I too had some trouble with the installer. What I wanted to do is actually, I got to the point where it sets up the disk and you have the express install, and then you have the advanced disk configuration button that you hit. Well, I have partitions that I wanted to keep. So I went to the advanced, and everything, all 4 partitions I had were grayed out because I had a partition for the EFI, a partition for the system, partition for home, and a partition for swap if it wanted it. And that I couldn't do anything in the advanced area to use any of that stuff. So I wound up, after playing with it and playing with it and playing with it, just doing an express install. It went fast, it installed. I wound up copying all my data off the other disk onto this one because it took less time to actually do that than continue monkeying with it. So once I got it in, I thought it was a very awesome looking distro. I kind of really liked the Budgie. Like you said, Min Spider, it's Budgie done right. It's not
Absolutely.
it's not overkilled. And yeah, they could have used they could have used a Solus symbol where the little dots are in the left corner.
You guys are
I agree with
so
Thomas.
superficial in them dots.
Oh yes, that was a great advantage to do that. But I had trouble with Steam getting it to work. Once I got it installed, I wrestled with that, and come to find out when I installed the NVIDIA drivers, it only installed the main driver. It didn't install the 386 driver. So I was able to get that installed, and poof, Steam came online. So then I was able to game on it. So gaming was pretty decent. I wrestled with the Flatpaks for a bit, and there's a lot of chat and Telegram about that. And I'm not familiar with using the old Flatpak method or any other way than the Flatpak install and stuff a name in there and you get it. But what I found out is just go to FlatHub, find the package that you want, and it'll have install right by it, and then you just download that package. You do a CD to downloads, and then you just, with the terminal, and then you hit rename, capture the name of the package you download, put it right after that in the terminal, and it'll go to town and get it for you. And that's how I've been getting my flat packages. I have not tested the snap capability yet. So that's about as far as I've got with it.
Well, we got another week with it yet, Dan, so no worries on that.
But I do like the way the Budgie's laid out. It's real easy to use. The package installer seems to work great. So I'm going to play with it some more.
All right. Very good. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well. I got to play with the Solus a little bit. I did the Mate version of it, and I got that downloaded onto a VirtualBox on one of my desktops. And I got to play with it. I had no problems with the installer. I downloaded the typical stuff that I use on there, like, Chrome and all that kind of stuff, and played around with that and had no issues. And Thomas, I just checked out that that Control Alt T thing. It was disabled by default. So I did have to go in and enable it. So I just had to double click and then actually put in Control Alt T as the keybind, and it worked just fine. But it was disabled by default. At least in my installation as well. It could be a VirtualBox thing, but I'm not exactly sure. But other than that, I mean, I'm probably going to install it on one of the laptops I have over here beside me. I have 3 laptops now, so I'm going to probably put it on one of those and test it on straight hardware instead of just a VirtualBox, and give more information next week.
All right. Thanks, Jason. It's good to hear. Glad it's going well so far. Tony, I know you installed it before the end of the show last time, but what did you think of Solus this week?
Well, at the end of the show, just after I installed it, it crashed.
Wow.
I couldn't get it to crash again, so I couldn't put any information out on that. The Plasma's been running pretty good, but every now and again something crops up and I get the little miserable face pop up and it tells me that something has gone wrong. And it's not as smooth and as good an experience as I would have expected and hoped to get from Solus, which is a shame, really, because I do love the work they've done. I always liked Budgie. But I have 2 issues with Solus. One is, and it probably won't affect many people, but one is that you must have a minimum of a 6-digit password.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I don't always want to use 6 digits, and it's annoying. And the other thing I found with it is that because it's locked down a bit, I can't seem to get some of the software I want. I have Googled and tried several times in the past to try and work out how to install Zoom, and I still can't do it.
Flatpak.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody keeps saying Flatpak, but Flatpaks have a bit of an issue. I watched a video that I think it was Eric did, and he was going on about how you have to install something else to get Flatpaks.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I just found it too difficult. In the end, I just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, it's a little cumbersome. Yeah, no doubt.
But that's the newbie in me popping out, which it still does every now and again. But if you're a seasoned Linux user who knows what you're doing, it's dead easy. These people, I watch videos, they type in the terminal and they install stuff through the terminal. I'm not very good at that sort of thing.
Sure.
Tony, if I could just say, if you go to FlatHub setup, right, it actually shows you 2 commands. That's it. And then if you go to FlatHub and click on the one that you want to install, it'll tell you the name of that application. It's as easy as Flatpak install FlatHub and then the name of that application. It's actually quite easy at the end of the day, but I do understand it's difficult if you don't know. Yeah,
and it's not straightforward like having it in your package package manager.
I got all hung up in that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused by something. Everybody jumps on Arch for the AUR. Don't go to the AUR. Don't go to that repository. And yet everybody's like, well, throw the snap on, throw the Flatpak on, throw the snap. I'm like, is it really that different? You know, why are people still jumping on the AUR when they're so quick to say, jump on a Flatpak?
Hi, Dave. How are you?
A little salty, apparently.
I guess.
No, it just struck me when MintSpider jumped in with Tony and said, well, just install the Flatpak.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so many times, people in Arch say, well, it's in the AUR. And everybody's like, oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I'm like, but it's pretty much, granted, it's not an equal, 1-for-1 equality, but it's the same concept. And everybody's so quick to recommend snaps and Flatpaks, but everybody still says, don't ever use the AUR.
I think that comes partly from
from a technological standpoint, snaps and Flatpaks are contained applications. They all have the dependencies you need within them. With stuff from the AUR, you might have to have the other dependencies from the AUR or your system that might cause conflicts or issues.
And I think also the concept of it is in the AUR, it feels like the wild where anybody can upload to the AUR, and Flatpak and snaps all have that, I don't want to say corporate feel, but they have that backing of corporate places. So it's almost like you have that sort of trust in it, even though it may not be warranted. You still have that feel of trust to it because they have companies behind it helping them out. So
there's probably a little more curation going on, I guess.
Yeah, there is that.
It's still, anybody can still upload to Snap, or Flatpak.
What Rocco was trying to say was the AUR seems pretty amateurish compared to the Snapcraft. And
that is not what I was trying to say, Darren. That is not what I was trying to say.
I don't know as I wouldn't recommend the AUR, but I would be careful of what you did pull from the AUR.
I wouldn't recommend it to people who don't understand it.
Right.
I understand.
Maybe.
Where they recommend it from.
Well, Distro Troll wouldn't probably recommend it to a newbie either.
I wouldn't recommend Linux to somebody that was a complete newbie. I mean, we're talking about the AUR. I mean, once they get to the point where they can install something from the AUR, they're good.
See what you started, Tony?
I guess part of what gets to me also is I much prefer to have my apps installed onto the hardware rather than just download AppImages or snaps or Flatpaks. It's great to have universal install containers, but I'd rather have my apps installed on my system.
I've had them all break on me at one point or another.
Yep.
It's all personal preference, brother.
I do get where Dave's coming from with that, but to be fair, I've used Manjaro a lot and I've never been scared of the AUR. I've installed what I needed to install from it and I've never had a problem with it. So,
yeah.
Honestly, my whole thing
is easy
That's a fair
compared to what I'm trying to do through Solus.
Honestly, my whole thing is check the main repositories first. If it's not in there, if I'm on an Arch-based distro, then try the AUR because it's going to be hopefully a little bit more performant or work a little bit better with themes than a Snap or a Flatpak would. And then try those if it's not in there or if I don't have that available to
I
me.
don't think you're going to find too much that's not in the AUR.
Yeah,
I think
Exactly.
the other big difference is that a lot of these Flatpaks and a lot of these snaps are maintained by the actual package developer rather than AUR is a lot of stuff that might be developed by different people who are not the original developer.
Yep. All right. Well, we can dive into the AUR versus Snap Flatpak argument later. Let's get back to
didn't mean to start that.
Just one quick thing I just want to say to Tony real quick. Sorry to interrupt. I just actually installed Solus in Solus Zoom just now as we're talking, using a curl command.
From the web.
I went to I typed in installing Zoom on Solus in Google, and I got a curl command to download it from gist.github.com. So there is a curl command you can just type it right in there, type a couple more things into to get it into the directory, and just launch it.
I'll install Budgie and have a go this week because Budgie I think will probably work better for me than the Plasma version.
Yeah,
I
I'm
don't
on the
know if they
Mate
still
version,
do it,
so-
but Zoom used to have a tarball you could just download and extract, and it had executable that you could run on any Linux distribution. That's how I typically ran it because I was hopping all the time. I would always just grab the tarball.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, this was a tar file. It was a tar.xz file.
Yep.
That you
It's
download.
a newbie thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically,
I'll get over it.
I'm newbie.
Yeah. Basically, you extract that, and then you can.
Oh, that's fair enough, Tony. You're still you're still learning, and that's good because it gives us that perspective of, so we don't forget what it's like for new people coming to Linux. So
yeah,
absolutely.
You guys take it for granted, and that it's easy to do because it ain't for me.
Yeah, everybody's talking about these Flatpaks or whatever the heck. I have no idea what you're talking about. So I have no idea how to even work with those. So that's how new I am.
Well, like I said, we'll have that conversation later.
Sorry, Rocco, I didn't mean to derail it.
That's okay.
I think we derailed you, Tony.
It's all Dave's fault.
It's okay. Thanks for your report. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
Yes, good evening. I went a different route in that I haven't really played with MATE or Mate or Matey or the one that starts with an M that's not Manjaro.
MATE.
The way I looked at it was that try something different. And I was really impressed. Well, first of all, I was doing it. I was creating the live flash drive from our previous weeks or previous periods distribution. So I didn't have my usual media writer, and so it took me a couple minutes to figure out how to get DD set up. So it won't destroy everything that I already built and would write out to the flash drive. And once I figured that out, it was a beautiful thing, and got that running. And the install was rather easy. I like the fact that it detected that I had partitions already set up, and would I like to change it over to Solus? And I said yes. And well, geez, that made my partitioning problems that I normally have not appear. That was a nice surprise. And it was just it was pretty smooth all the way around. And that was on my single core. I think it's 1.6 gigahertz, 2 gigabyte hard or 2 gigabyte memory laptop that has a error in the BIOS that usually causes distros to freeze up, but it didn't have a problem with Solus at all. And I was pretty much happy with it. I forgot what the package manager was, but I mean, the simple Google search, within 30 seconds I had it. So, you know, that was fine. What bothered me though was when I ran the updates, it said there were no updates available, and I was like, oh, okay. And then I remember, oh yeah, this is a rolling release, so yeah, it's probably not going to have that on there. But installing packages, I did it both through the GUI and through the command line, and both I found trivial in that it was not wasn't something that required a lot of brain power to work on. So I mean, if you're familiar with how to manage packages, it wouldn't really give you a whole lot of trouble, and it might be something worth to cut your teeth on as well, because it really makes it kind of a painless process, and you can see what's going on rather than worrying about, oh, is this going to work or is this not going to work. I did not do the snap or Flatpaks. As much as I like using it for certain application, I still, it bothers me that you have a independent environment being brought by each package from a snap or flat, and to me that just seems to be one of Derek's favorite words, bloat. But I mean, it just seems duplicating a lot of effort there. But I do understand why it's done. I don't think that, I think the advantages do not outweigh the disadvantages of having shared libraries. But anyhow, let's see. That's about all I've gotten with it. I've had it running past few days. I really haven't put it through its paces yet. I haven't done any compiles on it. I haven't tried to compile a kernel. I might do that for next week. See how that goes. Put it up to something like 5.4 or something like that with some of the modules turned off, just to see how it would react. But I kind of like it. I wouldn't mind having it as a standby OS. So if one of my Fedora machines go down, I'd throw that online and be ready to go. It's really kind of a nice nice little thing to have sitting there in the background waiting to go. So.
All right, thanks, Chris. Nick, how are you, sir? Welcome to Biddle.
Hey, I'm doing well, thank you. So I've only had a couple days to really play around with it. I had checked and seen which distribution we were doing a couple days ago and installed it. Installation was really easy and fine. I actually installed it on my distro hopping laptop, which is a 2011 Acer Aspire on a Core i3 and integrated graphics. So, and I have to say, I did the KDE version, and it was probably the snappiest distribution I've put on that older machine, even with it being KDE. Loved the theming, loved the dark theme by default. Installed some programs through the store, and everything went really, really smooth. I liked the way that was set up. Took a minute to get used to it. I'm used to Ubuntu and GNOME, but everything went fine with that. I'm not the biggest fan of KDE, but I have to say I enjoyed playing around with it enough that I got past the initial open up the settings and say, nope, I don't feel like messing with this. Don't like the defaults, and I'm going to move on, which is usually how my KDE experience goes. So, but I actually played around with it and reconfigured it a little bit. And it actually has me wanting to try KDE as a main desktop environment again. So kudos to Solus for that. Love the defaults that it had, but played around with it a little bit. Beyond that, I haven't really gotten a chance to dig into what I normally do with my machine, which is a lot of web development. So over the next week, I'm going to try installing Node.js and a few of these other web development packages, and just try to do my typical web development stuff on it and see how it goes.
Well, I'd be really interested in you coming back next week and letting us know how you make out with that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Colin, sir, might have done a video on Solus?
Rocco, why do I do this to myself, Rocco? I'm surrounded by KDE Plasma for the last couple of weeks. Seriously. It's not one of my favorite desktops, to be honest. But look, I'm running it now. Actually, I'm using it now with the Zoom Flatpak. It's working pretty good. But I installed it about 6 times. It was quite easy to install 6 times. It was worked out really well. But I had a boot order issue on the computer. It was nothing to do with Solus, of course. It was just the boot order which threw me out a bit. And I got the what was the error that I got? It was reboot and select proper boot device. And I thought, okay, so nothing's installed, which it did, but I just didn't realize that my BIOS had gone a little bit funny. So whether Solus did that to the BIOS or not, I don't know. Never happened before. So that was interesting, I thought. So I put all that in the video and found it quite interesting. But I think some people would be pretty happy with this Plasma because it doesn't have Discover. It's got the Solus Software Center by default, which some people would be probably happy with that because you're always hearing a few grumblings about Discover and people sort of not happy with it, although it's coming along quite nicely these days. And also they have Thunderbird out of the box as well, which is quite a nice touch because I prefer Thunderbird than Kmail. So, and I am tiptoeing around the wallet manager, trying to avoid that. Just close my. So that's so far so good. Haven't really got really into it all week because it's not my main machine. So I'm still using my main machine to do everything. So I'm going to try and get a little bit more involved with it as this week goes on and see how it works as opposed to the way Ferran's Plasma works. So I just want to sort of compare those two and see what the differences are. So I'm quite interested to see that. Overall, so far, running quite well.
All right. Thanks, Colin. Look forward to seeing your report next week.
Sure.
Paul, are you there?
Yes, sir. I downloaded it earlier, but it kept wanting to reboot into firmware on my laptop. So I reburned the USB, and I was able to get past that point, get it installed on the secondary drive. When I restarted, went back into firmware. So I do believe it's my laptop, not Solus, you know. I do have other problems. Like I have to go in to the main Windows boot partition, and I have Ubuntu's and Androids. I had to get rid of all that just to get it to boot properly again.
Right.
So I'll give it another try and maybe come back next week.
All right. Sounds good. Tyler, I think I noticed on Telegram that you said you didn't get a chance, but you got any feedback for us?
Yeah, I've not had a chance to try it, but I know Chicken actually pointed out something interesting, which would actually really be a blocker for some of the applications I use. And for some reason, Solus doesn't want to use the libhandy library, which is fascinating. And libhandy is basically a library that allows certain applications to become responsive in their design. So they could go from a very thin mobile interface to a full-on desktop interface without having to have 2 separate applications.
All right. Steve, sir, how are you?
Good evening, all. I did the Plasma. I did a live stream on it Monday. I'm a big fan of the Budgie. Peter knows that. I figured since I was doing a lot of Plasma stuff lately, I'd see the difference. And, you know, it's pretty much Plasma on Solus. They did theme it really nice. It looks beautiful. It was, you know, a very nice setup. Installation, I had no problems whatsoever. Installed really quick. The only issue that I saw, you know, as far as like maybe like using it for like a production type machine, when I had OBS, and I know I'm not the only one that had this. I think Eric might have had problems with in OBS, especially when you have OBS in full screen, doing a screen capture. Oh my God, the flickering across OBS is unbelievable. So you would, you know, minimize OBS, would look a little better, but it would still have this flickering going to it. I don't know if maybe doing a Flatpak OBS would be different. I'm gonna have to test that out. I mean, yeah, I mean, I saw nothing special with Plasma on there. I do like that their software center is there by, you know, replacing Discover. I do like that their software center allows you to install third-party like Google Chrome, some applications like that, out of the box instead of go searching for it. But I didn't play with it a whole lot, but I'm gonna, as we're talking about Flatpaks, I'm gonna kind of give it a try and see if that performs any differently.
Now, I maybe wasn't paying attention enough or whatever, but did you say what did you have? Do you have NVIDIA or what?
No, it's a regular Intel laptop. So
Because I know Vash was having some issues with that as well, right,
Yeah.
Vash?
I know Vash talked about that. He had one of his videos on fixing screen flickering in OBS, but I think that was with NVIDIA. The laptop I have is straight up Intel.
Okay. Very good. All right, Vash, you're up, sir.
All right. And I thought I was zoned out a little bit, but I thought you were talking about Solus for a minute, because I was like, I know I did have a pretty big issue with the install. And so I only really got through the install this week. I tried the Plasma version, and I tried to install it on my Desk Mini, which is running a Ryzen, I believe, 5 2600G or 2400G. And it would just kind of hang when it started Plasma, like before it even got to the point where it would install. Sometimes I'd get a background, sometimes I'd get a black screen with the cursor on it. So what we ended up finding was you had to drop down to TTY, and I believe you had to kill STDM and then restart STDM. It was really weird, but I tried it on 2 different ISO downloads, 2 different flash drives. It's something, I believe, maybe about the Ryzen chipset on the 2000 series. Kind of weird, but I mean, after I got past that issue, it installed fine, installed pretty quick. It boots up pretty quick. I just haven't had the chance to mess with it more, but it was really quite an odd issue when, you know, I would try to launch the installer and like nothing would happen. You couldn't launch, I couldn't even launch into like Dolphin. It was really weird. That's what was throwing me off.
Well, does anybody have any suggestions for that?
There is a thread on the Solus forums that somebody pointed me to in the Telegram chat. It was just, like I say, I think it's something weird with the hardware, because they were talking about it there, and that's how I found the commands to actually get in.
Okay.
To install.
Dig it. All right, Dan, what do you think of Solus this week?
I only installed it in a VM. I did the Plasma version. So now with all these other issues that people are pointing out, I'm going to have to try it on hardware at this point. I liked it a lot. It was fine. One of the things that usually annoys me by default is the menu, and so I changed that to the application launcher, which is like, you know, a little more compressed and concise and whatnot. So I had no problem with that. The other thing I did was I installed LatteDoc, and that also went fine. So far the experiments I've tried have gone just fine for me. So, Dave, I know you're on the edge of a little salty tonight, but that's okay.
It goes well with the margaritas.
Okay, well, how did your Solus experience?
Do we really want to know?
I'm not sure.
I have not had a lot of chance to play with Solus this week. I'm going to do more next week. I can only say I've always enjoyed Solus. I mean, I've installed it several times when it was 4.0. The only issue I ever had with Solus was there are some software that I use, like Sublime's Git software, Sublime Merge. Sublime Text is in the EO package repository, but Sublime Merge isn't. So there's, just a couple of apps that I use on a regular basis that they don't have. Other than that, I've never had an issue with it. And I actually am looking forward to digging deeper into 4.1 this week.
All right, sounds good. DT, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Hope everybody here is doing well. I installed the Budgie edition. I did 3 installs. I installed it on 2 different laptops, a Lenovo ThinkPad and a Toshiba Satellite, and I installed it in a VM. And everything worked good. Installing it on physical hardware, the install on these old machines, these laptops that I test these distros on, A8 processor, 4 gigs of RAM, old machines. They're not beefy machines at all. The install is like 5 minutes. Like, it's crazy how quick it installs. Like, that's the first thing you notice. Then you get into the Budgie desktop, just beautiful. The theming. I pull up a terminal so I can install the packages I need, the programs I want. Control-Alt-T, as everybody's already mentioned, is not set. So I go through the key bindings and see what is the key binding to bring up a terminal. There's not one. That's the problem. It's not Control-Alt-T. I don't think they've set one at all. So I create a key binding, bring up a terminal, then get into EO package to install some of the software I want to install. And as Dave has mentioned, there's a lot of things missing from the repository. Solus, the repositories for Solus are smaller than just about every other Linux distribution I've ever used. There's so much missing from the repository that is going to keep, especially people like me and Dave, we're used to all the programs we find in the AUR. Just looking around for about 10 minutes doing this search in EO package, I could not find at least 24 programs that I'm currently running on my Arch machine. And I'm talking about not that weird of stuff. I couldn't find the DWM window manager. It's not in the repos. Herb's Luft WM. It's not in the repos. These are kind of popular window managers. Xmonad was in the repos, but Xmobar, the panel for it, is not in the repos. And it's like, Qtile is not in the repos, another window manager. So there's like 4 window managers that I'm currently running that are not even in their repositories. Now I could build them from source, or I could install them from third-party package managers like Cabal and Pip and things like that. But as we've already talked about, once you get away from installing things from the actual package manager, then, things tend to break on your system. You got to be responsible for updating those packages that you built from source. And it just wouldn't be worth it for somebody like me to run Solus until they get all those packages in the repository. And people have been complaining about the repository and the lack of packages for years. And it's still so lacking. I really think the Solus guys need to address that soon. They need to really focus on getting some of these programs that people like Dave or myself, and I'm sure you guys probably came across software that you wanted that wasn't there. Because some of this stuff I want, it's not available as a snap or a Flatpak. You're not going to find a window manager or a desktop environment usually as a snap, right? That needs to actually be in the repos. Other than that, like I said, the install process was great. I was blown away by the install process. I think they're using some new compression for the Squash FS. The ZSTD, is that the compression?
Yep.
When I installed it in a VM, because this machine, my host machine, is beefier than the laptops, I gave it 1 core of my 12-core Threadripper. It installed in under 3 minutes. So it was just amazing how fast it installs. I just wish the repositories were better. So end of rant. So
Derek, I like that you brought up the ZSTD thing, because I think I actually saw an announcement that Arch is looking to switch to that as well.
Yeah.
They're switching away from your standard XZ compression format to ZSTD.
Yeah, and we install so many Linux distros, it is noticeable, the speed improvement. Like you can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, they said like 1,300 times faster or something like that.
I didn't notice 1,300 times faster, but it was
Maybe
definitely
that was 1,300%. I'm not sure, but they said it was like crazy amount of difference in the the amount of time it takes to uncompress that.
Derek,
Well,
you
it's
mentioned
too-
about the software and the repositories, and a lot of the programs you mentioned were window managers. Were there other programs?
I
like
mean, I
regular-
could have named a ton of incurses, terminal applications, command line applications. A lot of the stuff we
Here's a
typically find.
simple one. How about Clementine? You ask it to give you Clementine and it offers you strawberries,
That's interesting.
which is a fork of Clementine.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the repositories don't have everything in them, obviously. Snaps and Flatpaks and all that help out with Solus, but they're still kind of limited when it comes to that. So,
Is Clementine still being developed? I thought I read somewhere that it wasn't,
I didn't think so, Dave.
which
No,
would be
it was
why they
recently
offer you
updated to
strawberries
FlatHub.
instead.
It was recently updated at FlatHub not too long ago.
Maybe somebody picked it up.
Okay. Eric, sir, you made it. What's happening?
I may have been doing some extreme distro hopping.
What did you distro hop, extreme distro hop to Solus?
No.
What did you extreme distro hop to?
Manjaro. I'm doing some testing on their latest 19.0 preview for KDE Plasma.
Okay. So did you get to check out Solus this week at all?
I did. I looked at it in virtual machine. I did a stream on it. Solus is just it's just not for me. I mean, I hate to start like in a negative way, but yeah, I mean, I think people have really covered a lot of the same issues I've had. It's just frustrating to not have packages, and I know they say you can request them and all of that, but it just I don't know. When I think of a rolling release, it just Arch pops in my mind, or we got OpenSUSE with Tumbleweed. I guess it comes down to I don't personally see a benefit to running Solus for myself. I like to follow it, and I think that they're doing some interesting things. And then Budgie, is a great contribution. But in terms of the distro itself, I looked at the desktops, and yeah, there's some custom theming, but I mean, it's the standard desktops for all of those, and yeah, it's fast, but that's not to say that other systems are necessarily slow. How often do you install? How often do you boot? Yeah, and I just there's a script now for installing the hybrid support, but it's still not a first class thing, and it still has that sort of growing pains feel to me. And again, maybe if there was some reason for me, I know that they put a heavy emphasis on the newer hardware. Maybe if I had a newer system, something that would benefit from that. But yeah, I guess I just sort of I install it, I play around with it, and I just can't quite come up with a reason to want to continue using it. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, not meant to be a criticism towards them, but that's true of a lot of distros. So it's not like my opinion really counts for that much, but it's just for me personally. So.
Yep. Well, it's not going to be for every distro out there. That's why we have so much choice. That's why Linux is great, because some people who want to run Solus can, and some people who want to run Ubuntu can. Guys like Dave and Derek want to run Arch. That is great. Let them run Arch. So, yeah, those are our thoughts on. Well, does anybody else have any closing thoughts on Solus?
Did we miss Aris?
No, he went first, dude. He went. I think he was the first guy. He just
he tried to cheat.
I had connection issues, so I got disconnected.
Okay.
I'm deeply mistaken. Clementine was last updated almost a year ago, April 22, 2019.
Yep.
Man, time flies when you're talking about Clementines.
All right. Any last thoughts on Solus? Going once. Peter, you got to have a last word on Solus, right?
I just typed in the YouTube chat that I did run Linux Mint from version 6 to 16, and then I discovered Solus, and I totally jumped over it, and I've not looked back. So to me, Solus is my distro. Huh?
Yep, very good. So those are our thoughts on Solus 4.1. A lot of people tried Plasma. A lot of people tried the regular versions. We will give it another test for the next week, for this week here, and we will come back next week and talk about Solus and our final thoughts on it. I'm probably going to try to install it on a laptop laying around or another machine just to see if it's specific to this machine that it wouldn't let me install it. Other than that, I don't know what else to do with it. So,
are you going to try to run it for a year like you previously tried?
Wow, where's the ban button at? Somebody get rid of this guy.
Distro troll.
Right? That's who he is. No, I'm not going to run it for a year. For those that don't know, I had made a prediction a while back that I was going to run Solus for a year. It didn't last more than a day. And now I get trolled for the rest of my life, probably.
See, Derek, if they had actually changed that little 9-dot symbol into the Solus symbol and gotten every pixel correct, then he would run it for a year.
If I could have gotten it installed, I might have ran it for a year. Just saying. Throwing it out there. All right, so the distro challenges. So we have been picking them for however long we've been doing this, and we really don't have a system for picking them. And I kind of tried to go with a few different ways of, throwing like 2 or 3 names up there, letting everybody vote. And there was somebody, and I can't remember who it was. Forgive me for not remembering, but somebody mentioned about being a random thing. So what do you guys think about throwing 3 distros in a pot on a week that we have a distro challenge, and they're all like, specific numbers or random numbers or whatever, and we just pick one rather than sit here and vote about, we want to try this one, we don't want to try this one, we want to try this one. What are your thoughts?
So anybody can use any one of the 3 they want for the challenge?
No, we would be picking one, but it would be a random pick rather than us voting for it.
How about we put every one that's on the list on a spinning wheel, and we do it live on here. We spin the wheel and see which one.
We are so technically advanced on this show, Colin.
Wheel of Fortune, huh?
We would never be able to pull that off.
Anything that keeps Tony from getting a head start.
Well, he would still
have to be our display girl.
We would still have he would still have a 1 in 3 shot of getting it right.
So how about
Tyler, your mic is a little low, brother.
Oh, hold on.
I think it would be great if we did this like every other month, just so to make it interesting.
You could just write a short little script and have it pick at random. Just enter it in the terminal and boom.
We can do it many different ways as far as picking the one. I'm just asking, what do you guys think about making it more random rather than us voting for it?
Is it what's the motivation? Is it that the time it takes that we're doing it, or is it it's more fair for it to be random?
I think he wants to get Slackware in the show finally. That's what
well, I still have say on what 3 go in there, but no, I think Eric, it would be the motivation would be, and maybe it's the worst way of saying it, but I think it would be a little bit more structured to say this is how we pick a distro, and yeah, I guess random is not really structured, but at least there would be some type of structure to say, we're going to throw these 3 in a pot and we'll pick one out of those 3.
What I was going to say earlier is there is this button on top of Distro Watch. It's called Random Distribution.
Yes, I know that, but no.
Just do that live.
No, Choose Linux does that, and there's no way we're doing that. Because, like I said, we need a little bit of control on what we put in there. So you can get anything out of that thing. And so like I said
on
last
Distro
week,
Watch, on Distro Watch you get random stuff about routers and firewalls. That wouldn't work for.
But like I said last week, we're never going to do Gen 2, okay? Because it still has to be fun for everybody, okay? It's not going to be fun for 90% of us to install Gen 2 or something like that. So it still has to be something that translates into a good conversation and everything. So we do have to be selective in what we put in there. I'm just
what
saying
about-
maybe we should make it more random.
What about a random, a curated list that you've created of 3 or however many, and we just do a randomization thing like DT says, and
Yes.
that's fine with me.
Yeah,
Honestly,
dartboard.
And I would not honestly mind making a script that would just randomly choose from whatever input you want to provide to it.
If you want to do that, Thomas, I'd be more than happy to look at it and then, say, hey, we'll use this to do it.
I'm totally fine with that. Just tell me how you want to provide the input.
Okay.
That's all I need to know.
The other thing you might want to consider is that, maybe once every 6 months, have, an option of 3 choices like calculate, a Gentoo derivative. But when those come up, they are strictly 1 week experiments instead of the 2, so that, those that actually do want to try them get a chance to at least jump into them, but we're not alienating everybody else for 2 whole weeks.
Well, the
1
other
week long
option you
enough
can
for
do
a
that
Gentoo
with.
install.
I'm sorry, DT, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it was 1 week even long enough for a Gentoo install. The kind of machines these people install it. I mean, it seriously might take a couple of days for some.
Well, no, but
No,
I mean, a straight Gentoo install, yes, it would. But, with Calculate Linux and even Sabian Linux,
Well-
the derivatives, they're still Gentoo, but they can install on pretty much any modern hardware in, okay, granted, half an hour to an hour, but
But I wouldn't have any problem with suggesting we try Sabian or something like that at some point. It's the really detailed things where people just don't have time to
Right.
sit here and install Gentoo, okay? Even the Arch install is a push for everybody because we all have things we got to do. We all got jobs. We all got things where, content we're all putting out, like we got lives. So, even the Arch install is asking a lot for people to try. But I don't have a problem with...
I mean, I love Arch, but I would never suggest a straight Arch install, for this community to do as, a test for 2 weeks.
Well, I think we did the
We
Arch
did it
install,
already.
but we allowed people to use scripts or whatever,
Yeah, we
and
did.
that's okay. And I think we can always find a way to allow for those types of situations. I'm just trying to, like I said, make it somewhat random and yet structured at the same time.
The other option, potentially, if you'd like to do this, is we could always put a poll on the website or something and have people vote. And that could at least give you some idea, because right now we just have a list of 20 distros on the forum.
Yep.
And there's no, someone will come in and just say, well, let's try Tramjara, or let's try,
Right.
and it's one person. But if we had sort of a list with a poll, maybe that's a little bit more.
How do we get away from like somebody going in and upvoting it multiple times in that way?
You limit by IP so that they can only do it once.
The other problem you run into,
Well,
with
unless they-
the kind of
VPNs.
polls. I was going to say, with the polls, you run into the problem. You're going to have people voting that have no intention of doing the install. They're just doing it to troll you. So you're going to have votes for
Well,
some of the BSDs.
might narrow it down.
Here's what I would do, though. Here's the way I look at it. I wouldn't say that poll is the absolute. What I would say is that poll shows the popularity of what people are actually interested in trying, and then from there, maybe you take the top 3 and you randomize those.
That's a good idea.
And in defense of that, Derek, there are a lot of people in the chat that don't install what we install, but they still like to hear what we say about it. So, some of those votes are going to be legit of what they want to see, even if they're not themselves going to install it.
I just remember one time I put up a poll. This was about a year ago. What distro should I hop to? And this father and his son, they stayed up all night writing a script so they could keep voting in this poll, so they could vote to have me distro hop to Ghost BSD. And
wow,
you're going to have people like that vote 2,000 times.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree.
Right.
Well, but you're going to know that that's probably an aberrant thing, right? I mean, anyway, someone had just said
2,000 times. Yeah.
Someone in chat had just said, well, it's easy to get around. And I mean, yes, it is easy to get around those types of restrictions, but it's also easy to tell when someone's influencing. I don't know. We're just spitballing here. It's not like,
Yep.
But
I think that's a good idea, though, is to kind of use the poll to grab the 3 that goes into the pot, and then we'll use some random number generator or whatever Thomas comes up with to pick the one. That way we don't have to worry about voting on it. That way we have a little bit of structure to say, hey, these, and yeah. So.
Okay.
I like your random approach.
The structured random approach. There you go.
Can you put a poll that pops up in Discourse when we go to Discourse? We can just select which one we want to use, because mainly only us and the viewers that go to Discourse anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, we can do a poll in Discourse, but that requires that you're actually a member of Discourse, I think.
Yeah.
So the website might be a little easier for folks because then there's no commitment.
Right.
And we could, it could, am I right? We could just make it a specific link like, bigdaddylinks.com/distro poll or something like that.
Yes. You know how to do that, Rocco. You're dangerous.
Well, what I'm saying is that's what we can do. So it makes it easy for everybody. They don't have to sign in for it. They don't.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we'll work on. Nothing's set in stone, but that's what we'll work towards anyway. Just like I said, to kind of give it a little bit more.
So I have a question. Since we're talking about the distro challenges, some of the distros have been there for several months. Are they just not viable, or what's going to happen with them? Like Fedora Silverblue, it's been like, I don't know, like 5 months or something in there.
Yep, it's been on there for a while. But like, it's very hard, Aris, to kind of narrow that list of 15 distros down to a number we can pick from. So, I guess if there's one on there that you really want to see, then push for it, and maybe it'll get into that 3. But there's certain ones that, until somebody does push for it a lot, then it may not get there right away, because there's other ones people want to try. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get away from with the random thing, is to have it be a little bit more random, and not, hey, this new distro came out, so we got to try it.
Hannah Montana Linux.
Right, Paul? Right? All right. Does anybody... Okay, so now is your guys' chance to continue the AUR versus Flatpak snaps. It's freedom right now. Do it. Somebody start it.
All right. I wasn't here. I said something in chat, but AUR is not scary at all. You just have to be mindful of what you're doing. The only real danger there is out-of-date packages and dependency issues. I have never seen anyone put like malware or dangerous things in the AUR. Has it happened? Potentially. But the reality is most people are only using the more popular stuff in there anyway. So, if you just go to the AUR, search for the package that you're trying to install, you can see the popularity in the votes, and that's a good indicator of are people using it. And then you can also go into the package page, and there's a conversation that happens there, and you can see, are people having issues with this? And those are the things I used to judge. I'm using Zoom that I installed from the AUR 15 minutes ago. And a lot of packages are in the AUR. They're well maintained by people who know what they're doing, and it's perfectly reasonable. There's nothing wrong with that. And also, there are some packages that a lot of people aren't using, so there might not be a lot of activity, but there will still, it doesn't mean it's a bad package. When was it last updated? Is it being maintained? Is it orphaned? Is it marked as out of date? Or, so it's actually a really good system, but it's not just install an AUR helper and then just mindlessly install everything without doing a little bit of work, looking into it.
Well,
it's just as easy to get a bad, yeah, it's just as easy to get a bad thing from, I've had stuff that doesn't work from Flatpak or stuff that doesn't work from snaps. And nothing is perfect, right? It's getting packaged. And so anyway, that's my take on it.
See, here's the thing, Eric. I don't think the danger comes from or is for a user like yourself, because you're going to check things out. You're going to do the steps that you just talked about. I think the danger comes in when people don't understand how the AUR works and do just blindly install things like, hey, it's got every package out there. I can just install every one I want and not check into them, not look at them. And I think that's where the danger comes in.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. You really need to do a little bit of homework. You don't need to get crazy about it necessarily, but you want to look into it a little bit, like you said.
So you're saying with snaps and Flatpaks, you don't have to do that. You can just blindly install.
Look at that too, because a lot of times what you'll find is there's multiple variations, maybe not multiple versions, but you'll find the same thing packaged in spell, like named differently, but the same.
Yep.
So you got to be careful you get the right one in those places as well. So I think it holds true across all of them personally.
And yet
Well, they
the AUR is the one that has the bad reputation.
I don't think so. That's not coming from me. I don't know where that's getting spun necessarily.
Dan Simmons,
Dave.
you are responsible for all this bad publicity.
Yeah.
I don't think the AUR has a bad name. I
Yeah,
just think it comes with responsibility.
Yeah, caveats.
I can equate it a lot to the open build system. I'm going to steal Nate's thunder because I can just see the look in his face. There's stuff in there that I've tried in the OBS that was great, and there's stuff in there that I've tried that didn't work. And it's up to the people that are maintaining it as to whether what the quality is. So,
and
I was gonna say there are two advantages to the snaps overall. One of them is that a person who develops the app actually can update their own app, like Spotify does. That's one thing that the AUR cannot do, at least as far as I know, or it hasn't done so far. And another thing is that snaps are sandboxed. Now, how much sandbox that protects you, I guess that would be up to a debate. But there is a sandbox by default.
Well, the AUR is just it's the package build, so it's not really housing the file itself. It's someone's maintaining the package build that your system then interprets, gets the files it needs, the dependencies it needs, builds it all if it has to. If it's a binary package, it'll just download it from the source.
A lot of it you have to compile. So I mean, it's
no
different than building it from source, from getting it from GitHub or something.
Yeah. That really all the AUR is doing is saving you the time of having to figure out what dependencies you need. I mean, AUR is amazing because someone has taken the time to figure out all the things you would normally have to figure out on your own, and done it for you. So it's like, hey, here you go. I mean, to me, it's a service. It's an amazing thing that Arch offers.
Well, I find. Oh, sorry.
The problem with the AUR is it's exclusive to Arch, and because of that, we're Snap, AppImage, and Flatpak. You could just if you wanted to, you could package just Flatpak or just Snap or just AppImage and not package anything else, and pretty much everyone would be able to install it. Whereas you can't package just an AUR package, and that in order for other people.
There's no such thing as an AUR package.
Well, you can't package. Sorry.
I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just
you
saying,
can't package just an AUR program because only Arch users can use the AUR at the moment,
and only Ubuntu and Debian users can use PPAs. Like that doesn't really. I'm not trying to argue with the point.
Snaps and Flatpaks are a form of universal installer. That's granted, but to automatically assume that they are better or safer than what you can get in the AUR, I don't think is as cut and dry as most people seem to make it out to be.
It's not, Dave. It really isn't. Vash, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say, Rocco, I mean, you were talking earlier about, you don't want people to go and, run a random command, but I think the first time you enter your, root password in terminal in a lot of Linux systems, it'll say something like, with great power comes great responsibility. To me, that's part of it. People always joke to run the rm-rf command on root, and it's, you can't just blindly do that. You have to at least look at what you're doing. And I feel like if you're just going to blindly copy commands, then I don't know that Arch is really the place for you. It's just not, it's not something that you're probably gonna like.
Well, it's not something you're going to like, number one, but it's not something you're capable of maintaining either if you're not going to do the diligence you need to make sure you're not putting in commands blindly. Nate, go ahead.
So I'm not with someone who is known for what you
Mike's
love.
a little hot, dude.
I saw these. Is it better?
It's better.
Is it better now? Okay.
It's better.
All right. So I'm not someone that I would consider to be like an Arch fan at all. However, I do see the value. Like I'm not without viewing the utility of what Arch provides. But at the same time, whenever I go through, like, I read like the warnings, they always say don't activate the AUR. I read that a lot. So it's very confusing because people say use the AUR on one hand, and on the other hand they say don't use the AUR. So there's a lot of confusion there as far as, well, what's the right thing to do? So for me, the right thing to do is use OpenSUSE.
And there you go.
And
Colin, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mate, did you say?
Yep. Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I was going to say snaps and Flatpaks, I find the best advantage of those is there's no dependency nightmare whatsoever. So they either work or they don't work. You like it, you don't like it, you can get rid of it. You don't have to have anything left over on the system that's causing any issues. So that's where I find an advantage to those packages, to be honest. But there has been one issue with snaps, isn't there? That game or 2048 or whatever it was, somebody put something in there. That was a snap, wasn't it? I think we had an issue. But that was solved pretty quickly by the Ubuntu team, I believe. So, you know.
Right. And well, that's what I was kind of alluding to with there's a sense of security with some people that somebody's looking at these packages that, you know, when you look at or when you think about the AUR, who's really looking at those packages? That could happen and nobody's actually overseeing anything. I'm not saying that the oversight on snaps are perfect, because obviously they're not, or it wouldn't have been there in the first place. But what I'm saying is there's that sense of security with those types of packages like snaps and Flatpaks.
Now I have to interject a little bit, Rocco. There are plenty of people that are looking at those AUR packages. There are a million nerds out there that run Arch. And trust me, it's all open source. You can look at the package build. You can see what's going on with those packages. If there was anything weird about it, you would hear about it.
Well, that's DT. That's why I said that there's a sense of security. I didn't say there was security. I just said there's a sense of security because people have that corporate feel of somebody's watching it. Where yes, there's a lot of people that are looking at packages out there, open source packages on the AUR, but that is just people and not like a company. Or so what I'm saying is there's that sense of security rather than it's not maybe not real.
So canonical is not people?
It is people, but it has that feel to it. I guess maybe nobody's understanding what I'm saying, but it's perception.
It's very much.
I mean, look how often malware gets on the Windows Store. And people barely flash an eye, but then when it gets on the Snap Store, it was found within like a week, and then it became a big deal. Yeah, a day, exactly. So people are looking at it, and if people weren't looking at it, we wouldn't have found out that malware was on it.
It very much is a matter of perception, but kind of like, you know, the discussion 5 minutes ago when people were talking about if you blindly just copy and paste commands, you shouldn't be using Arch. Well, I would say if you just blindly copy and paste commands, you really shouldn't be using any Linux distro.
Well, look, a PPA can be just as, for lack of a better term, insecure as a AUR package.
Yeah. You can really mess up your system that way.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is it's less likely that someone's going to try to sneak like malware or crypto miner. It's more likely that someone accidentally does something that breaks your system, right?
Yeah, even if it's not intentional. I mean, you may have a package that conflicts with something else you have.
Exactly.
Next thing you know, you've borked the whole thing up.
Exactly. So that is entirely possible. And I did just want to say to Pete's point earlier, I wasn't trying to disparage universal packages because I'm on Arch and I use Flatpaks as well. Those things are all available, right? They're all choices that give us different freedoms to, this works better as a Flatpak. Great, I'll download that. This is something that's better from the AUR. Great, I'll download that. So it's just another tool. And like everyone's saying, there's a perception that maybe something is safer coming from an entity versus just a general user. But the reality is if you aren't comfortable doing a little bit of work just to make sure, and that's the thing, none of these are difficult, right? It's not hard to go to the AUR. It's not hard to go, package search or to FlatHub or to Snapcraft or any of these places and just do a little bit of, I would argue that the AUR is actually a little more useful to me because I can actually see user feedback versus FlatHub or Snapcraft. All you see is just what the package is, when it was updated, and which versions are available. I don't know if anybody's having issues with those packages, where if I go to the AUR, I can immediately see if someone's having problems with it.
But also, though, I guess Pizza brings up something maybe he wasn't intending to, but you can say, oh, I used the snap of something over on, Ubuntu or, Manjaro or whatever. And so you're comfortable with it in the sense that you've already used it once. So you know what it is. So bringing it over to Arch, that can be good. You can't do that with the AUR. You can't say, I used the one in the AUR and now I want to use it in Debian or Fedora or whatever. So that's kind of, I think that's some of what the point was.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, Pizza, but I agree that the being able, like, so for the things that I install and use in Pulse, or Pulse Audio, Pulse Effects, and some of those other things are always Flatpaks, no matter what the system is. But it's also a little disingenuous or unfair to say, well, Arch AUR is only for Arch, just like a Deb package is only for a Debian-based system. So it's that was my only point. Was it's
the AUR. One of the things I like the most about it is how easy it is to see what the package is doing. It's pretty easy to read package builds, although it's a little bit harder to write them. But it's pretty easy to read them, and you can see what source it's downloading it from. And that way, it's real easy to spot malicious packages. And however, another issue with snaps and Flatpaks is since they're sandbox, some of the more core system things can't be packaged as them. Same with AppImages. Whereas with the AUR, if I want like a super obscure desktop that not many people use, it's safe to bet that it's going to be on the AUR. There's still system packages on there, like GDK, no CSD. The AUR can do all of the system stuff too, which helps you customize your Arch system even more. Whereas snaps and Flatpaks, trying to get some of those packages could be way harder on Ubuntu and Debian and other distros.
And one of the things I like about the AUR and the OBS as well for OpenSUSE is there's only so many packages that any distribution can maintain. You've got, the main core, and then you've got community and all these different repos, but there's only so much that's really realistic for, we talked about Solus having fewer packages, and that's because they have a smaller team and they just don't have as large a user base. And there are lots of reasons for that. And it's because it's hard to do. And the AUR extends that capability of Arch to include, some of the people maintaining AUR packages are core developers. Like they're not just random people. These are packages that don't belong in the main repos because they can't support them there, or they just don't belong there. So the AUR is an extension, and OBS is exactly the same way. There's a lot of stuff on OpenSUSE that, and not just OpenSUSE, the OBS you can use for lots of different distributions because you can build it in different formats. So these are ways to extend beyond that core set, and maybe Solus would benefit from something like OBS. I don't know how that would work for them, but
Solus is definitely in need of something similar to the AUR. Like, its repos are so small and they're so picky with what they package. Like someone in the Telegram pointed out that they don't even package lib handy for whatever reason, and Chromium still isn't on Solus. And you can use Flatpaks and snaps. I don't use snaps for several reasons. I don't like their GDK integration, and I don't like how many mount points it creates. And I noticed that whenever I have snaps open, it tends to severely slow down my system. Not sure why. So because of that, Flatpaks are my go-to, and I actually usually go to Flatpaks before the AUR. The AUR, a lot of the time, or every once in a while, there's a package that doesn't work on the AUR. But on FlatHub, pretty much every FlatHub package I've tried works on anything I try it on. So if the package is in FlatHub, I usually get it from there before I'd go to the AUR, but I usually go to the AUR before I go to snaps.
Nick, what do you think about this whole snap, Flatpak, AUR discussion?
I don't use Arch, so I don't use the AUR too much, but honestly, I like snaps, and one of the things that I like, I'll go with the actual package first and try to install it on Ubuntu first, but I love the fact that I can go in and install Snap. And sometimes if I don't actually look to know what it is that I'm installing, it may be a Snap, it may be the actual application direct, and I couldn't tell you the difference sometimes. I mean, they run mostly the same, especially after the first time I've launched a Snap. So, you know, I appreciate them, and I like the fact that with the Snap, it's exactly that. Since it's universal, you can use it on a lot of different distributions. You can package it one time. The same thing with the Flatpak. And honestly, I like that you can get to a point where hopefully the average user, a typical user that's newer to coming to Linux, can go get a package, install it, and it's going to work. And they wouldn't necessarily understand the difference. You're not needing to touch the terminal in order to get it installed. Just install it and go. So,
yep.
Sorry, you can go. You can go.
I was just going to. There's a lot of advantages to Snap, and I see Canonical really looking in that direction. You know, Chromium, and then some of the core apps and like GNOME and stuff. I guess I'm a little concerned because I haven't had great luck with them personally, and maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
But I keep trying, and I keep having the same kind of difficulties. The sandboxing is tough because, for example, I used the Snap of Mumble, and I couldn't save the audio anywhere that I was trying to record, and it didn't tell me that while I was recording, and I ended up recording an entire like 2 hours of audio, and then when I went to save it, I couldn't get anywhere because it was sandboxed, and I've had that happen over and over and over again on different applications. And so they're getting there. I understand it's a work in progress, and I do hope that it gets better. And I do see the advantage of them being able to use snaps instead of that packaging thing I was talking about, how difficult it can be. They've got all these different releases, LTSs, and then current release, and all this stuff to maintain. If they could do that as a snap, it's a lot easier to manage. So hopefully that is what's going to happen. I just, at this point, I guess snaps have not been the best option for me. But that's my microphone.
Well, I use the Snap version of OBS, and it works great. The one exception to that is that it cannot write videos to a attached drive. So I have my 8 terabyte storage drive that I have for all of my videos, and it can't write to that drive because of it being, you know, an external drive. Well, in an internal drive, but a separate drive, I guess. So I don't know. I like both. I like the options that they give us. I like snaps. I'm not in the Snap versus Flatpak camp. Like, I don't really care. As long as I can get the software that I want, whether that be Snap, Flatpak, AppImage, or whatever, dev file. As long as I can get the software to run, I don't care what it is. But I do like the options that they give us. None of them are perfect, though.
To add on to the sandboxing issue, I like how, for me, sandboxing, I like it when I can't tell it's being sandboxed. Like Flatpak, I can the only way I can tell that it's not being sandboxed is if I'm using a GDK theme that isn't packaged on FlatHub, and then you could run some commands to unsandbox the GDK directory so that they work again. That's the only thing that's the only way I can tell that a Flatpak isn't sandboxed. Whereas snaps, if you save a file, you can tell it's sandboxed. If you're using the Chromium snap and you download a file, then it's saying it's sandboxed, and you have to give it access to the directory. Whereas Flatpak, I can never tell if something's sandboxed, or I can never tell that it is sandboxed because just because of how well they have integrated the sandboxing.
All right. Any of you other guys want to get in before we change subject? Sorry, Pizza, not trying to interrupt you, but
it's okay.
I just want to know, Colin, Jason, Tony, Thomas, any of you guys want to get in on this discussion before we move on?
Well, I just I'm a bit the same as you, Rocco. I pick and choose which ones. I cherry pick a lot of things that I use. AppImages, executables are a really good one too. All you got to do is just make a menu in the menu editor, and away they go. I find them. I've been using them a lot more lately because I find them really convenient. They probably work a bit better than some AppImages, to be honest. So, yeah, I cherry pick what I need to use. But anything that needs access to the system, like you said, attached drives and all that, I try to use something from the repos if it's possible. So, I just cherry pick what's best.
How about you, Steve? You got anything?
I had problems with like Kdenlive, the AppImage. I can't see. It's like all the selections are darkened out. It's got a weird theme to it. No matter what I change, it kind of, everything disappears, and I don't know where to save anything. So I started using Flowblade, and I'm actually using the Flatpak, which I haven't had a whole lot of luck with in some other programs, but it's working really fine. I think I had one issue where all of a sudden it like grabbed all 16 gigs of memory and went into a swap and like maxed my cores out, but I haven't had, that was only like one incident. I don't know, I don't know if it's because Kdenlive is more of a QT and it doesn't, mix with GTK. I am totally oblivious to stuff like that. But I agree with you, using the tool that works the best, if you have a more updated version through Snaps or Flatpak, maybe, especially if you want to do stuff that the newer the newer software is coming out with, then that's what you got to go with.
Yep. Esnix is here.
Hello, Ez. Can I say one more thing about AppImages before?
Only one more thing, Pizza.
Okay. I feel like AppImages are the most important of the three because Snaps and Flatpaks can be replaced by one of each other or just by Distro's native package manager, whereas AppImages are really the closest thing to portable executable files we have in Linux where you don't have to worry about dependencies.
Okay. Pizza, they do make a lot of self-extracting single packages too that come in tire balls. Like Firefox comes that way too. You just unzip it and it's ready to go, and you can carry it from distro to distro without any hiccups.
But if you have a missing dependency for Firefox, then it doesn't work. Whereas AppImages include all of those.
Yeah,
Yes,
but the tire ball contains it all.
Why drive a Mini Cooper when you can drive a semi? Snaps and Flatpaks take a lot less space than AppImages, and a lot less resources when they're running.
I wouldn't say that about Flatpaks. Snaps, I don't know much about, but Flatpaks are pretty big.
All right. Before we move on, Esnix, do you want to get on in this conversation?
Is my audio okay?
It is, sir. Welcome.
Perfect. Okay. Well, I don't have a whole lot to say. I don't use Snaps, Flatpaks, AppImages. I just use the Debian repos, and what's there is there, and it usually works for me just fine. On Arch, I haven't had a need to pull anything out of the AUR. I just use the Arch repos, so
okay,
I'm more than happy doing that.
So you don't need a big selection of software for what you do?
I really don't. No, I'm a very simple user.
Okay. Hey, that's why I said before, there's we have all of these things. They give all of us options to use them, and it's a great thing. If you need them, you need them, and if you don't, you don't. Chris, go ahead.
I mean, basically, I ignore the Flatpaks and the Snap images and stuff like that as well. But there's certain cases, namely with Discord, I found that, at least on Fedora, if I use the Flatpak to bring in Discord, it works every time. And that's about the only reason why I would even keep the Flatpak management, or actually I think it's a Snap. I keep the Snap management on my systems is just for that one application. But I mean, it does bulk up the system. And Pizza is right. I mean, my God, I look at all the mount points that are on the system. It just gets a little ridiculous sometimes. So.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've beaten this topic to death. We do have to move on because there are other things we got to get to.
I'm ready to keep beating a dead horse.
I'm going to mute his mic. That's what I'm going to do. Sorry, Pizza. There is one thing that I want to bring up. Jacob Rucker from parkingthought.com posted in the Telegram group, and he has a podcast called Parking Thought, and he's trying to do a show, and a lot of his show has to do with being grateful for everything we have. So I'm going to read this to you, and I'm basically asking you to give him some feedback. So this is what he posted in the Telegram group. I'd like to try an experiment with my podcast next week and would love to have you guys contribute. If you have a few minutes and a microphone, record yourself saying your name and something you're grateful for maybe something people overlook. For example, I had a mom tell us how her kids were in diaper stage and she really appreciates the Velcro on modern diapers. Okay, so you can equate this to anything in Linux, or you can equate it to anything in life, because that's what he's looking for. So he asked, just record your comments and send them directly to his Twitter account, which is Parking Thought, or his email, which is jacob@parkingthought.com. And he's going to do like a compilation episode of people, and all of the recordings he's going to basically put together. And I just figured I'd bring it up, let everybody know about it in case you didn't hear about it, and, give him some feedback. Let him know what you're grateful for, because we have so much to be grateful for, not just in Linux, but in life. There are many people that have worse times or worse situations than I do. And I'll just speak for myself. I can't speak for everybody. But I am blessed to be where I'm at, and there's a lot to be grateful for. So check his podcast out at Parking Thought, and he has a website, parkingthought.com. Like I said, if you want to record yourself, if you don't, but at least think about it.
Can you put the link in the YouTube live stream?
I just put his email in there, so it should be
cool.
parkingthought.com. Yeah.
He just wants us to email him an audio file?
An audio file of a recording of your name and something you're grateful for.
Okay.
So
that is I follow him on Twitter too. Yeah, he does some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, his podcast is really good, dude. And it's not a long podcast. I think some of the episodes are like, 20 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, some of them. But it's definitely some good stuff. He actually joined Biddle one night, so he has a great story. His story is actually on Brunch with Brent, on one of the extras episodes, if you want to go check that out as well. All right, before I forget, Biddle Europe is next week, so I'll probably mention it at the end of the show, but just in case I forget, Biddle Europe next week, February 8th at 3 p.m., along with the regular show at 8 p.m. Check that out. All right, now, the last topic I wanted to go into was Rocket League. I know you guys are all excited to talk about Rocket League. No.
Where's Michael?
I don't really want to talk about Rocket League itself, but I do want to talk about the idea of owning your games and what it means about that. So Rocket League was recently shut down by Epic. Epic bought Psyonix, and they shut down the Linux support, I should say, for Rocket League. So now, after how many years and how many... Go ahead.
Linux and Mac.
Yeah, Linux and Mac, yes. Now I bought the game a few years ago. I played a couple 100 hours worth of Rocket League, and now I no longer am able to play on Linux. Now, I can play on Windows if I want to, but the idea is, okay, so when Google Stadia came out, there was this whole pushback because you didn't own the games. You're only renting them. And at any time, if they shut down the servers, you lost your games. And one of the things I had said then was, it's pretty much the same thing with Steam. Okay, there will be certain games that may run for quite a few years. But if they decide, the studio that developed it or whatever, if they decide they're going to pull that game, it's not going to run. So you really don't own the games anywhere that you have the games. There was games on Windows that, like, I had downloaded, I think it was Dead Space for Windows. Okay? It doesn't run on Windows 10. That game is useless now. So unless you're running a Windows that was, Vista or 7, you're unable to play that game anymore, regardless of you bought it wherever you bought it, because it just will not run on Windows 10 now. So I guess I want to get your guys' thoughts on this whole owning versus renting games, software, whatever.
Well, I mean, my opinion is you brought up a point I was going to make, which is there are a lot of online games that I used to play that just when the servers are gone, they're gone, and that's it. Like the game just ceases to exist. It has nothing to do with, them supporting it beyond, and that's a problem I think that a lot of people have faced. Now they are offering refunds, right? And
some people have received refunds. I'm not sure what the criteria is, but some people have received refunds.
So I have to
some
say,
people have been denied too.
So I actually have to manually put in a support ticket to get a refund, because if I go and requesting a refund, it automatically gets denied based on their criteria. So I had to go in and ask, say, hey, Psyonix is saying I can get a refund for this. Can I please get a refund? And then they'll finally get you one.
And I will say that I think that's, whether or not there's some difficulty and bureaucracy around that, the fact that they recognize that people could feel slighted by this and are actually willing to offer that refund. I mean, I'm not saying I'm happy that they are removing support, but I do think they're handling it in a better way than, say, that game I bought 2 or 3 years ago that was an online game that now no longer works. That company doesn't care. Nobody expects them to refund their money, right? And so I think, there's a lot of complicated issues around this. And the reason I said it's not just Linux and to bring up Mac is that I think they've just sort of looked at, look, most people are on Windows. That's what we're going to focus on. And so they've decided to, for whatever reason that is, they've decided to not support it. And the fact that they are giving a refund, I mean, it's not the worst way they could have handled it, I guess.
I think they said as the reason they're not supporting it anymore was, like you said, most people are they're focused more on the Windows side of things. The Mac people that play on Macs and people that play on Linux make up like not even 1% basically of their overall player base. So they're like, they didn't want to continue on to have people that have to maintain that side of things, because it's not really making them any money or things along that nature. It's not doesn't make sense for them to continue on when it's not their player base.
My question is, I'm happy that people are getting refunds if they want a refund. My question is, should we be expecting a refund?
No.
I play Call of Duty games. Okay, one of my favorite Call of Duty games was Call of Duty World at War. It was Call of Duty 5, I think it was. That came out in 2008 or something like that. Punkbuster, the anti-cheat that's built into it, no longer supports Call of Duty World at War. So that means all of the servers are done. They stopped supporting the servers, and Punkbuster also stopped supporting it. And like I said, I'm not trying to say people shouldn't ask for a refund. My question is, though, do you expect a refund for every game that stops working now? Because, like I said, we rent these games. We don't buy them. So, if I'm wrong, tell me about it.
I think in this circumstance, you should expect a refund, because you've got some mob that's come in, taken over, rained on your parade, right? If it was the original people that you bought it from that did that, then maybe not so much, because if they had an excuse they couldn't afford or to continue with the Linux thing, then fair enough. But it's been taken over by somebody, and then they've just pulled it out from under your feet. So I think that's a bit different, to be honest.
Well, the other aspect is that those other people that paid the same money I did for the game still have access to the game on their platform but I'm losing access all just because I'm running a different operating system.
No, I thought it was the for Linux though. I thought it was the you can still play the game as far as the single player mode and the whatever thing like that. But you just can't play online anymore.
Well, okay, and that may work, but 99% of the Linux users don't play like in a match together with each other. They play online with random people.
So, what I'm saying is that is the mindset of the whatever company, whoever it was that came in and bought it, was like, well, you can still play the game. You just can't play it competitively online with other people.
To be honest with you, I mean, I kind of disagree with them coming in and they should give refunds because they came in and bought it and shut it down, because any business, if they buy something, are going to make choices on whether or not it's profitable or not. So they bought the business, and now they're going to say, okay, let's, make money, basically. And they make decisions based on that to stop supporting this or to support this or continue on. I don't think refunds should be based on if the original company shut it down or if a new company shut it down. It shouldn't be based on that, to me.
Well, and Rocco, I think it gets to another point that you're bringing up. When you say rent, when we look at Steam, it installs the game for you anymore. I know it used to be when you bought a game, you got the installer, you got a disc, you had an image on your computer. Now, let's say Steam decides to pull games tomorrow, and I've completely wiped my system and I reinstall my OS, and they've gotten rid of these games. I have to go to Steam to install it because I no longer have an installer. So I don't own that game. I can't get that installer even though I've paid for it, even if it's a single player game, which is what I play primarily. It's gone to me. And do I get a refund? Are you going to give me a refund? I don't necessarily want that refund. Maybe I just want to play the game, and you've taken that away from me because you've gotten rid of it.
Well, even think of it on a bigger level. If Valve decided to shut down Steam tomorrow, pretty much every Steam game you have is not going to play because
that's my biggest fear.
You have to install them through Steam. You have to download
and launch them
and launch them through there. So it's and you're not going to get a refund for every single game in your library because Valve decided, hey, tomorrow we're going to shut down because we're not making enough money or whatever. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying I don't think we should be. It's a very dangerous line to demand refunds because of a situation like this.
I just wanted to say that if Steam takes a game off of the store, it's still in your library and you can download it still. It's just not, you just can't buy it anymore.
Yes, but that's not taking into account if Steam shuts.
Yeah,
if Valve shuts Steam down. Okay.
Yeah. Now I feel like that Epic didn't really have a reason to shut down Rocket League for Linux. I mean, it probably wasn't making them very much money, but also it probably wasn't making them lose money either. So they should have just kept Linux support, maybe support it less. But now,
but Pizza, that is their decision to make.
Yeah, I know.
It's not our decision out here to say that you should support this or shouldn't support this. They're in control of their business, and if they make a decision to, I'm not defending Epic.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the guy defending Epic because they're terrible sometimes. Okay, I'm just trying to say that if they make a decision, it's not in our jurisdiction to say you can't do that.
And even for those games where we have the disc and can reinstall it, has anybody ever read the EULAs on those things? Because the EULAs all say, this is our software, we're letting you use it as long as you agree to use it within our set parameters. And so if they stop saying and say, this is no longer available, it's actually technically you're not supposed to be using that disc anymore.
Well, those of us old enough to remember GameStop and reselling games, and there was a whole big deal about. I mean, I used to do that. I would buy games, and then when I wasn't playing them anymore, take them to GameStop,
trade them in.
Yeah,
I think there's got to be a moral point here too, Rocco. To be honest, because I mean, at some point they're going to say we're not taking games anymore, but we're not going to support that platform anymore for that game. But I'm sure they're happy to take people's money even the same day they're going to announce it, right? So
look,
so there's
I'm not
some
trying
moral,
to defend Epic, Colin.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying there's got to be a moral compass somewhere there where people can demand their money back, because why did you allow me to buy this game today if you're going to announce it today or what? There's got to be some circumstances where maybe some people are within their rights to be asking for their money back. Maybe not
and
everybody.
then there's also
Sorry,
There's
Tyler.
also another aspect, and there's precedent for this. If something is being advertised as having this or that support, and it gets cut off while others still have support, then there's that precedent. Well, okay, you can get a refund, or a feature that's being advertised like this is this feature. People buy it for that feature, and then that feature gets cut off via software. There's precedent that action can be taken against the company. Just look at Sony and what they did with Other OS and the PlayStation 3. Sony actually lost that case because it was an advertised feature.
Well, but then again, Tyler, how long do you keep that? So Rocket League comes out as a game. It says they support Linux. They support Linux for 5-10 years or whatever it has been. I mean, is it a lifetime guarantee that they're going to support Linux? I mean, yes, there probably should be a precedence if today they say they're supporting Linux and tomorrow they say they're not. And, you know, okay, that's unusual. That's bad. Maybe you want a refund. But, you know, this game has been out for years. Like I said, I'm just saying, do we really own our games or do we rent our games? And I think we rent our games.
Well, Rocco,
I think
something we need to bring up, and I want to be that person to bring it up. We need to talk about proprietary software versus free and open source software, because until you have open source games that the community owns, these companies, they can just shut down anytime they want. They can shut down the servers anytime they want, and your games are gone. But when you have something that's owned by the community, it really can't go away until every last person involved is done with that game.
You are right, Derek.
We need to start promoting free and open source games. I know it's always been this separate realm, even those of us that promote free and open source software. Yeah, but you can't really have free and open source gaming. The games have to be proprietary. We have to be stuck on these proprietary platforms like Steam. But the more these kind of shenanigans keep coming up, like the one with Rocket League, you know, maybe more and more people will start fighting for free and open source gaming.
Games are incredibly expensive to produce, and I think we all know that.
Yeah.
I have no problem with a company having a proprietary model. What I'd love to see is at the end of it, when they say, okay, we're just not going to support this anymore. Maybe they don't want to support the server infrastructure, whatever it is.
Open source it.
At that point, yes, open source it. Yeah. And some companies have done that, where they've gotten to the end of life on a project, and they've just sort of said, okay, we've made back what we wanted to. It's no longer selling or viable for us to keep it going. And they've said, here, community, you love this game, you want to keep it going. Here's the source code for the server portion. Here's the source code for the game. Mod it, host it, do whatever you want, because we've made the money we needed to off of this. And yeah, I would love to see more companies do that. But the idea of just general open source collaboration on a game, it would have to be well funded. I mean, you're talking dozens of developers, and I mean, it's full-time work. So
yeah. And one thing I would see as a problem with open sourcing the game, though, is there's the intellectual property and the characters and things like that. So like certain games, you know, you look at a Star Wars game or something, you know, you get people modding it and doing some things like that, or changing the game and where they're going to go with the intellectual property. I would see certain companies simply having a problem based on that, not even necessarily the code of the game.
Yep.
Sports games especially, yeah, you'd have to pay all the athletes and everything.
Exactly.
Well, I've brought this up before as well, Rocco, with when my kids buy games, you go to the store, you buy the cover and the disc, and it costs you $90 odd, which is a lot of money for a game. But fair enough, like you said, people put a lot of time and effort into creating these things. But then you get home and you're downloading 90 gigs worth of stuff. I quite often wonder whether there's a game actually on that disc, right? So if you wanted to play that at home, is there anything on that disc? What are you paying for? Can you not play it if you don't have internet? You know, I mean, there's a lot of things to consider with that stuff too. It makes me wonder whether you got an actual game on that disc anymore.
Well, that's why I said about you renting the games, because when you buy that game, you install it, it's not even going to allow you to play it until you update it. Most games won't. Okay,
Yeah,
so like the newest
right.
Call of Duty, you boot it up and it wants to update. And not only does BattleNet want to update the Call of Duty files, but then when you get into Call of Duty, then it inside the game it wants to update. It's not going to allow you to play that game until you do. So that's why I say you don't really own the games. And all I'm saying by bringing that up is be careful and be wise in what you want to buy and play, because you're not going to, you end up buying something thinking that you own it and you're only renting it. So if that bothers you, be careful what you buy. If that doesn't bother you, then just, go about whatever you're doing.
One of the better options is wait until the games simply just go on sale if you really want it. So if it does go under, you're not out a lot.
But let's also look at other types of media as well, right? Music.
Yeah, that's
movies.
all. They're trying to get us on streaming stuff for everywhere.
Well, and so, I mean, we're at the point now where I think very few people have collections of files on their computer or physical media somewhere in their house, because even if you buy something on Amazon or somewhere else, you're really, it's DRM content that you're watching through their service, and you don't own it. You don't have a copy of it. And so, I mean, I had CD, cassettes to CD to ripping them as MP3 files and terabytes worth of songs. And now I just stream, and I think that's the progression of gaming as well in a lot of ways, is they're pushing more and more towards, Steam has been a great example of digital delivery. Yep. Frankly, I appreciate Steam because it's so much easier for me to just go get the game I want to play and install it and play it. And I have that license for as long as I want to play it. And frankly, I see people all the time. I have 500 games in my Steam library. I have 1,000 games. How many of those games do you actually play? And how old are they?
2. That's
right.
It, 2.
So there is a little bit of a collector, hoarder mentality there to some degree. Now, if there
How
is
many
a game,
free hours in your life do you really have to play all those games?
Well,
less and less every day, Dan. Less and less.
If you genuinely love it, for the people who love Rocket League and play it every day and who are going to be impacted by this, I do think it's a shame. And I it's a shame it's this way. But Rocco, you're right. It is a company's decision. We don't own it. They've made this decision. I mean, maybe the best that comes out of this is that the Windows version runs on Proton.
Well, I'm just as upset about not being able to play Rocket League as anybody else. I mean, I played a lot of hours of Rocket League. I really enjoyed playing the game. I loved it. But at the end of the day, it's not my game that I own that I can demand that I am going, I want a refund. Okay. I'm not shaming people for asking for a refund. If you want to ask for a refund, that's fine. And if you get it, that's great. But I personally am not asking for a refund because this has happened so many times before. It's not really shocking. So
I'm disappointed for you too, Rocco. I am.
Me too.
One thing I don't understand that much is why everyone's so outraged about Rocket League, but then when Rust discontinued Linux support, no one really cared, and Rust was a pretty big game on Linux.
Well, I don't think nobody cared, but it's definitely. I don't think Rust was as. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I don't think Rust was as popular as Rocket League.
In terms of level, isn't Rocket League sort of close to not necessarily AAA but AA per se?
I would think any time that you have pro leagues, I would think it's a AAA game. So
I mean,
I was gonna say it's basically an indie game that grew super big and became a AAA game.
And it has longevity beyond a lot of games, right? A lot of games you buy, you play, it's the new hot thing, and then 6 months later, a year later, unless it's on sale on Steam, right? You're probably not going to pick it up and play it. Yep. Whereas it seems like games like Rocket League just have this continual momentum. So
and all the MOBAs and all those other type games.
All right. Well, let's not forget the controversy surrounding the company that bought Rocket League, Epic, and Tim Sweeney and his attitude towards Linux users. I think that's a huge contributing factor to why this blew up.
I'm sure it is, Tyler. There's no question that, like I said, I'm not defending Epic because sometimes they're terrible. And, you know, as Tim has no love for Linux anywhere. So, you know, but what I'm saying is ultimately it's their choice. Ultimately it's their company.
Oh, no,
Nate,
I'm just saying
Nate
somebody
has
was
the last
asking-
word before we go. Nate, go ahead.
I just have one thought.
'Kay.
So I'm still upset that they shut down the Wii shop for my 15-year-old Wii console.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand your plight. So just don't ever buy into online gaming. That solves the problem. Buy old Nintendo cartridges and give your vote with your wallet.
That's why I
really the only
said for the people that are upset about it, you know, like Derek, you said,
It's always happened.
Support the open source people, support the open source games. You know, that's what you want to do. If this upsets you, then that's what you should do. If you get it, I mean, if you understand that this is the way it is, and you don't care, then buy whatever games you want to buy.
It's games today are just not a good investment.
But it's not just games, like Eric said. It's anything
True.
right now. You know, it's any of the services out there.
Yep. You know, I mean, as much as I do like gaming every once in a while, you know, I realize that unless if I know it runs locally, I'm not going to expect any online service to last. So just automatically expect if there's an online service attached to a game, number one, it's not a good game if it's required. It's just not. And number two, expect it to be dead eventually.
All right, so I have to bring up one more thing. I know we're running late, but you made me remember. You know, it's not. You know, we Eric had said it's not just games. Think about the cloud storage out there and how many services are out there. I remember a company called copy.com, and they had a great upload service, tons of cloud storage, and I paid for a lifetime subscription of Copy. And they were awesome for the few years that they were in business, and then they decided to go out of business, and I was out of my money. I'm not demanding a refund for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what happens today. This is a part of the tech life today. So, okay, we're out of time. But everybody gets the last word. Peter, last word.
Thank you for all. Pardon me. Thanks everyone for being here for International Biddle Solus Day. It's been wonderful.
All right, Thomas, last word.
The script is already done and in the Telegram. If somebody wants to debug it, have at it. Kick the tires, light the fires. I'll explain to Rocco how to use it, but there's a help dialogue that should be pretty self-explanatory. Other than all that, thanks for having me on today. It was fun to listen to you people rant. And I'll see you guys next week.
All right, Derek Graham, last word.
Budgie, awesome. Looking forward to next week. See ya.
Dan Kelly, last word.
Dan Kelly's muted.
You're muted, Dan Kelly.
Ooh. Okay. Rocco, thanks for putting on the stream tonight, along with all your helpers that you have do this. I thank those as well. And the games are just a part of a bigger problem. They don't want us to own any physical entertainment media whatsoever, whether it be DVDs, games, you name it. Sooner or later, it's all going to be streamed. Unless you can find equipment to play your stuff on, that's the end of it. That's all I have to say about that subject.
Jason, last word.
Well, again, thank you for having us all on the show and giving us a forum to speak our mind and to test out different Linux distros. It's definitely appreciated, and I'll see you guys next week.
Tony.
Yeah, thanks for doing the show, Rocco, as always. Look forward to the double show next week with the European version. Bit more of a sociable hour for me, but as always, I'll probably do both. I've already installed the other version of Solus on the laptop. So I'll have a play about with that and see how that goes next week. And I'll see if I can get Zoom installed and sort this Flatpak thing out.
But the real question, Tony, is do you have next week's distro installed already?
It's on a pen drive.
Chris, last word.
I was going to do something kind of fun and neat, but we're really getting kind of long in time here. Requests for comments, RFCs, are how the internet was built. And it's all the documentation and stuff like that. One in particular, RFC 968, gives you an idea of what we used to go through in computing, and that's today's computer history lesson. Look it up sometime, Google it, RFC 968, and it's a hoot and a half. Anyway, good night, everyone, and thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to drone on and on about the stuff we care about, and hopefully you care about it as well. And with that, on to the next.
Nick, last word, brother.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks, everybody. And look forward to next week. Hopefully I can be here.
Awesome. Colin, last word, brother.
Yep. Thanks, Rocco and gang. It's awesome discussion tonight. Could have gone a lot longer on this one, but nevertheless, looking forward to trying the Solus Plasma a little bit more to see how it goes. So everybody take care. Thank you.
Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Rocco. Good discussion. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Tyler, last word.
Thanks for the show. This will actually be my last one in about 4 months because of a schedule change at work. I did get a refund for Rocket League. And to finish it off, go Chiefs. Go Chiefs.
Steve.
Thank you, Rocco. Great spotlight again. Who's on this next week?
We're getting there. We're getting there.
Okay. I want to thank everybody out there that follows. I reached 500 this week, and I'm playing around with learning and doing little videos, so stay tuned.
Nice. Bash, last word.
Thanks for the stream. You somehow let me on again. Just remember, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
Dan, last word.
Thanks as always, Rocco. Great discussion this evening, and I look forward to trying Solus on some hardware.
Me too. Dave, last word.
Thank you, Rocco and crew, for this wonderful space. And in case anybody has the slightest doubt, yes, by the way, I run Arch and I happily swim in the AUR.
Are you still salty, Dave?
I think I finished all my margaritas, so not at the moment.
Okay. Derek, last word.
I think everybody that's watching the stream tonight should go check out the fine, free, and open source games like Super Tux Kart, Zero AD, Zenotic, Battle of Westnoth. You can probably find them in your repository. If you can, I bet they're in the AUR. All right, guys.
Zenotic is definitely a good game. Mm-hmm. Eris, last word.
Thank you for the stream, and I will add that I'm one of the last few people, I think, that buys everything as much as possible with media. I buy my movies that way. I buy my games that way for console. I try to avoid online as much as possible.
You and Nate get along well, let me tell you. Eric, last word.
Thanks, Rocco, for putting this on. This is my weekly interaction with all of my nerdy Linux friends, and I'm so happy to see you all as always. And thanks to the Solus team for putting out a new release. Sorry, I'm not as enthusiastic as others. Make sure if you want to on social media, just let people know that there is a Europe edition next week that tends to get overlooked. And so if folks kind of put the message out there, that would be great. And we'll work on that poll and get some stuff going there. And otherwise, everyone have a great week. Good to see you.
Nate.
It was great seeing you for the second half. And I just want to say, so it was probably about 20 years ago out of the bargain bin, $14.99 for Donkey Kong Country. Still works today, no problem.
That is an awesome game. I loved Donkey Kong Country. Do you have to blow on it yet to make it work, though?
No, not this one. It's a Super Nintendo.
Pizza.
Thanks for providing a place to hang out. And remember, kids, grub is better than System D.
Pizza.
Asnix, last word.
Okay. Thanks, Rocco. Thanks, everyone else. Sorry I was late. Had to work today. And hopefully I'll get to Solus Budgie over the week and be back next week.
All right. Well, either way, Asnix, it's any of the Soluses you want to try. So it could be the Plasma, it could be any of them. So whichever you pick.
Cool.
All right, JJ, Dr. Random, last word.
Okay, Rocco. Sorry I couldn't make it earlier. I was busy participating in the charity live stream that was going on for the Destination Linux Network. Also, I have an acronym for this Sunday that will be very important, and it can go across boundaries. TGINTP. Thank goodness it's not the Patriots.
Told you it was Dr. Random. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. I do want to thank the developers of Solus for the work that they put into it and the fact that they give us a great distro to try out. Obviously, there are some issues with, some people have, including myself, but thank you for all of the hard work that you put into it. We really do appreciate it. Linux Spotlight. So this past week was Carl Rochelle of System 76. That was a great conversation. I was kind of not surprised, but I guess I was pleasantly surprised that he had he injected a lot of humor in his stories, and he was a really approachable guy, and so I thought it was really awesome. This coming week, I finished editing today an episode where I sit down with Nick Stoff from the Linux Experiment. So if you've seen his YouTube channel, he puts out some awesome quality content of Linux videos. So that will release Wednesday at 6 a.m. So definitely check that out. Biddle Europe next week, 3 o'clock, Saturday, February 8th. Mark the calendars for all of you Europe people that can't stay awake at 4 a.m. for no apparent reason. And look for that poll. I don't know when we'll be able to get it up because we're going to, encroach on Eric here a little bit to help us out with that. But look for the poll that's coming up. We'll probably announce it next week, hopefully, about how we're going to go about it and what it's actually going to be like. But I would appreciate everybody's input in that as well. So that's going to wrap it up. We are officially closed for business. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next week. Until then, long live Linux.
Thanks, Rocco.
Live Linux.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good week.
See y'all.
Hey, you are.
Nate.